水原一平氏の違法賭博問題。水原氏へ直接インタビューした記者が番組に出演し、当時の状況を説明しましたので、出演番組の翻訳動画をご覧ください。
Let's just start with it. When did you first catch wind that something might be up with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter?
Let's just say several months ago. You know, I have to be careful that I protect my sources, and I can tell you we knew as early as January that these wire transfers existed.
And so when did you first get a copy of anything that had Shohei Ohtani's name on it? And I guess it was spelled as the way that without the H, correct?
Exactly. So I have seen two wire transfers, both for $500,000. One was from September of 2023, so last September, and one was for October of 2023. They both had Shohei Ohtani on them from that bank account as the sender, and the name did not have an H in it. So you can imagine one of the first things we did was sort of dig into, does he use that name? And we have since been told by multiple sources, including Ippei Mizuhara, that that is the name he uses as his legal name. It's on his passport, it's on his driver's license, and it's on his bank accounts.
And obviously then it would lend a little bit more credence to the fact that it was in fact him, or coming from him, or from his bank account, or from his computer. And I'm sure that might have lent a little bit more, one would think, standing for you to eventually now reach out to the Ohtani camp. Would you say that?
I can tell you that the thing that we can say for sure is that Shohei Ohtani's name is on the wire transfers. Now, the question, of course, is who sent them? That is the question.
That is absolutely the question.
Yes.
So now let's, because it's obviously not something any journalist wants to do, is to suddenly be part of the story. And I'm not saying you are part of the story, but the fact that the first story you received from Ohtani's camp was with the interpreter was one thing, and then the story that came from Ohtani's camp after the interpreter spoke was another thing, which now is part of the story as far as I'm concerned. So I'd love to start here with you now. And so when you reached out on Tuesday, walk me through who you reached out to and how the interpreter wound up speaking to you.
Well, we published a story on Friday that I really recommend folks read if they've not read it yet. And so if you follow along, we call it a TikTok, not like the app, but it's like a timeline. It's a journalism lingo for us laying out what happened when and how we learned it. And as you follow through that story, you'll see we began reaching out to Ohtani's agent, and then we're connected with a crisis communication spokesperson. That's very normal if you have the kind of allegations that we were dealing with here. And so that was not a surprising thing to me. And we had we went through a course of conversation, trying to understand what happened, waiting for answers. And Tuesday-ish in the afternoon, we began to get word that Ippei Mizuhara would do an interview with me. And I was on the East Coast, so roughly around 10:30 at night, we did a 90-minute interview with Mizuhara, with Ohtani's crisis spokesperson listening to the interview.
And that's where he said Ohtani was bailing him out, essentially, from his own gambling problems. Tisha? Well,
so the way I interview sometimes, but oftentimes, is to say, so what happened? And I say, and then what happened? And then what happened? And so through the course of this pretty long, detailed interview, Mizuhara laid out that he had met the bookmaker at the center of all of this at a poker game after a Padres game in San Diego at the hotel room, or not the hotel room, I should say, at the hotel. And he proceeded to be extended credit by the bookmaker and began to place bets. And he, I obviously asked on baseball, and he denied, no, not baseball. He knew the rules about baseball, but the bets were on other things, including international soccer, domestic football, both pro and college, and professional basketball. So we continue to talk. I continue to ask questions. He explained he got deeper and deeper into debt. He was making roughly $85,000 when he was with the Angels, when he starts betting. By the time he and Ohtani go to the Dodgers, he's making somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000. He didn't want to disclose how much he was making. I told him we had sourcing that said it was somewhere in that range, and he confirmed that. So, his salary is changing, but he's getting deeper and deeper into a hole, according to his story. And at some point, he goes to Ohtani, and this is according to the first version of events that he tells me, because, of course, now we know that there will be a second version of events that I get the next day. But in this first version of events, he says that he goes to Ohtani, tells him that he's in financial trouble. Ohtani does not like it, but Ohtani offers to pay off the debts. And I then proceed to ask a number of questions. I wanted to know, how do you wire money to a bookmaker? How does that happen? Who did it? And it's through those series of questions and answers that I begin to get details where Mizuhara says that it was Ohtani who logged into his computer and made the payments. And Mizuhara says it was 8 to 9 payments of about $500,000 each. That matched sourcing that I had for the wire transfers. I had only seen 2, but I had been told it was at least $4.5 million. And then, of course, the next day we get a different version of events.
Okay, so here's some follow-ups. Because I've been speaking to a lot of people around here who are familiar with this sort of activity, to use that phrase, and they're wondering how in the world somebody who is making as little as Mizuhara could get so deep in that hole. And so you're saying that there was credit extended by the bookmaker to the interpreter?
According to Mizuhara, it was credit extended. He never cashed out, and he just continued to make bets.
And the credit was extended in. Now, did he say why that the bookmaker knew Ohtani was behind him? Because that's the reason why it might make sense for somebody who makes as little to get credit extended by a bookmaker.
We are trying to get to the bottom of that very question, because you're not the only one, and the folks who listen and watch your show are not the only one who want to understand how someone making $85,000 would be extended credit like that. Now, what I have been told by folks who know this business very, very well is if you pay your bills, you continue to get to bet.
And the bills were being paid in a timely manner. Do we know when the 8-9 payments were that Ohtani found out? Because again, if it got too deep in a hole that Mizuhara had to give up the ghost to Ohtani, right? And again, I know this version of events has been completely washed over, but this is the first version of events that was delivered to you with a member of the crisis management PR team listening in. And so the question I would have then is that, so when did Ohtani know? How deep was Mizuhara in by the time Ohtani would know and start delivering payments to allow Mizuhara to keep betting, right? Or that's not the timeline?
In the second version, or not the second version, but in the second interview that I do with Mizuhara, he says Ohtani never knew about his gambling debts. In the first interview I did with him, he said he went to Ohtani in 2023. I have sourcing that correlates with that the payments, the wire transfers were made in 2023.
Okay. And then you said moments ago that at least $4.5 million. Is it possible there's more money than $4.5 million that was paid out by Ohtani, Tisha?
Right now we're reporting that it's at least $4.5 million.
Okay. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern for free.
水原氏の当時のインタビューが語られていましたね。一日も早く問題解決してほしいものです。 このチャンネルは日本人選手に対する海外のインタビューなどの翻訳動画をご紹介します。ぜひ、チャンネル登録高評価よろしくお願いいたします。